The courtroom was supposed to be silent, dignified, maybe even dull. But that day, that courtroom felt like a powder keg, a place where centuries of order suddenly collided with raw nerve. And at the center of it all stood Jasmine Crockett. Braids neat, face carved with defiance, heels clicking like thunder across polished marble. She didn't flinch, not even when Chief Justice John Roberts, the man known for his cold detachment and vanilla legal sermons, slammed her with a $200,000 fine like he was tossing a bone to a hungry mob. Cameras weren't allowed, but phones buzzed in pockets and palms like heartbeats. The media had already circled the building like vultures by dawn. Fox News had their narrative locked before sunrise. Crockett's collapse, radical Democrat punished. But they didn't know Jasmine. They'd never met a woman who fought like she bled ink, someone who chewed up congressional gaslighting like popcorn and came back smiling. Quick question before we go on. If you were sitting in that courtroom, would you have clapped for Jasmine or stayed quiet like the rest? Be honest. Drop your answer in the comments, because silence speaks too. That fine wasn't just a fine. It was a message, a warning, a crooked slap across the face of any woman, especially a black, mouthy, brilliant one, who dared call out hypocrisy from the front bench. The Republicans were foaming at the mouth. And Roberts? Let's not pretend he was neutral. He sat there like a marble statue dipped in smugness, practically itching to flex that gavel like it was a sword. The charge? Contempt of court. The real crime? Speaking too loud, too boldly, and too black for their taste. What nobody expected, what shook the courthouse more than the fine, was her response. Because Jasmine didn't grovel. She didn't cry. She didn't ask for mercy. She stood up, and when she did, something cracked. Not just the tension in the air, not just the old wood of that chamber, but something deep inside Justice Roberts himself. Because Jasmine didn't just speak. She testified, and by the time she was done, that smug face behind the bench had turned pale. His lips, tight as a locked safe, parted. Not for another ruling, but for something he hadn't felt in years, shame. The kind of shame that only truth can pull from the throat of a man who thought his robe made him untouchable. The fine stayed. But Roberts changed, and that's where the Rayall story begins. It started with a hearing. Not some high-stakes, edge-of-the-cliff national security scandal. Just another hollow session packed with Republican noise and Democrat eye rolls. But then Jasmine Crockett walked in. No script, no filter, just fury wrapped in fire and facts. The topic was voting rights. Again, in the GOP panel, led by crusty Senator Maynard Greaves of Texas, a man who looked like he smelled like expired mayonnaise and Confederate dust, was already throwing jabs wrapped in legalese. They called it an integrity review. Jasmine called it what it was, a taxpayer-funded hissy fit to make sure black folks had to fight 3 times as hard just to vote. The hearing was supposed to last 2 hours. It barely made it past 1. It happened when Jasmine pulled out the receipts. Not opinions. Not sources say. Actual screenshots. Real-time email leaks from within the same Republican staffers who had been coordinating voter suppression strategies under the table while waving flags above it. Nobody saw it coming. She dropped a color-printed packet on the table like it was a church collection plate and stared at Maynard without blinking. "This is what you're doing behind the scenes while y'all cry about patriotism," she said calmly. "These are your words, your private chats. So let's talk about that instead." Greaves turned purple. The room went silent, except for the clicking of pens from staffers who didn't know whether to write or run. Jasmine sat back like she just ordered dessert. The Republicans lost it. A few demanded she be silenced. Another shouted for procedural order, whatever that meant coming from a man who had once called Harriet Tubman an early Republican influencer. But Jasmine didn't budge. She crossed her arms, waited for the tantrums to die down, and said, "If y'all can't handle your own words, stop writing them." It should have ended there. But Greaves wasn't done humiliating himself. He dragged the matter into court under the guise of national security breach. Called in favors. Got the case fast-tracked. And somehow, someway, it landed in front of Chief Justice John Roberts, America's favorite cardboard cutout in a robe. The legal claim? Violation of classified government protocols. Never mind that the so-called classified Messages were from unsecured campaign servers and had been leaked by a Republican intern who thought she was doing the Lord's work. That part didn't make the official record, but this wasn't about documents. It never was. This was about Jasmine being too loud, too right, and too unapologetically democratic in a system that still expects black women to know their place. The Fine was theater, a badly written one-act play with Roberts cast as the stern patriarch trying to remind the rebellious daughter who's really in charge. And while conservative media cheered, calling her reckless, angry, unhinged, her supporters knew better. Jasmine didn't break the law. She broke their script. She hijacked their fake decorum with truth and made them look like what they were, frightened men playing dress-up in democracy's attic. That fine didn't come because she leaked anything illegal. It came because she didn't bow. What the court expected next was silence. Humility. Regret. What they got was none of that. The courtroom smelled like old air and older power, mahogany walls, stale perfume, and the quiet hum of entitlement. Everyone had taken their seat except her. Jasmine Crockett stood alone in the center aisle, not rushed, not rattled, just calmly adjusting the sleeves of her navy blazer like she was about to checkmate someone at a chessboard she didn't ask to play. The room was packed. Conservative reporters from fringe media outlets hunched over their notepads like hyenas at a carcass. Network anchors sat upright, blinking fast to catch every second for the evening broadcast. A few Democratic aides huddled in the back, whispering prayers and curses under their breath, not sure which would help more. But all of them, every single soul, had one thing in common. They were staring at Jasmine. Judge John Roberts walked in late. Not dramatically late, just the kind of late that reminded everyone he could be. He didn't look at her. Not yet. His black robe swung stiffly behind him as he climbed the bench and settled in like the air in the room belonged to him. He adjusted his glasses, nodded once, and said, "We are here to deliver judgment on the matter of Representative Jasmine Crockett." She didn't blink. He read from his notes. Standard nonsense. Legal mumbo-jumbo designed to drag 5 minutes of fluff into 30 minutes of theater. Her name was said like a diagnosis. Her title, Congresswoman, mentioned once, almost like an afterthought, the way someone apologizes before stepping on your foot. Then came the number, $200,000. Dead quiet. It landed like a brick thrown through a library window. Some gasped. A few conservative journalists fist-pumped beneath their desks like teenage boys sneaking beer in church. Roberts looked pleased with himself. For a moment, he resembled the smug face of a history teacher who thinks he just corrected a child who dared to question the textbook. Still, she didn't move. The court clerk looked confused. She was supposed to respond. She was supposed to do something, flinch, shout, cry, beg. Anything. Instead, Jasmine Crockett slowly walked forward, her heels clicking on the floor like punctuation marks. One step at a time. She approached the microphone. No shaking hands. No crumpled paper. Just her voice. Calm. Steady. Low, like thunder about to make a decision. "May I speak?" she asked. Roberts, still trying to preserve whatever illusion of control he had left, cleared his throat and said, briefly, "Wrong move." She leaned in and started slow. "Your Honor, I came here prepared to accept whatever penalty this system thinks I deserve." The room leaned in. "But I need everyone here to understand something first." The temperature in the courtroom dropped. "You think this is about rules," she continued. "But this is about fear. You're not fining me for what I did. You're fining me for who I refuse to stop being. Loud, black, unbought, and too damn informed to sit quietly while people like Senator Greaves pass voter laws with racist fingerprints all over them." Someone coughed. The rest stayed frozen. Even Roberts looked like he might chew through the stem of his glasses. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "You fine me 200 grand for leaking messages that prove what millions already know. But you don't find the men who wrote them. You don't find the donors funding it. You don't find the judges who keep turning a blind eye while folks like me get run over in these marble buildings." She took a breath. "So go ahead. Write the check. Frame the receipt. Put in your museum of shame." She stepped back. No notes. No apologies. Just silence. Roberts, suddenly unsure whether he was presiding over a case or getting dragged into a truth-telling session he couldn't escape, sat still. His face was blank, but his eyes were not. For the first time, he looked human, like a man who had just been handed the bill for a lie he helped write. And Jasmine, she returned to her seat like nothing happened. Because for her, it hadn't. This wasn't the climax. It was just the scene they'd remember when they finally admitted she had been right all along. If you're still watching and haven't subscribed yet, maybe it's because you're okay with voices like Jasmine's being silenced. Or maybe you don't really believe one person can shake a courtroom. But if you do believe in truth punching up, go ahead, like this video, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button. Don't just sit there and nod. Do something. We have a target to hit 50 subscribers before the end of April, and you can make this happen for us. Please subscribe. She didn't rush. She didn't clear her throat. She didn't glance at notes because there weren't any. Jasmine Crockett stood in that courtroom like someone who had waited her whole life for this exact moment. And when she spoke, it wasn't loud. It was deliberate. The kind of calm that makes people stop chewing, stop scrolling, stop pretending not to be listening. Let's get one thing clear, she said, voice steady like a river that knew where it was going. This isn't justice. This is theater. And you, Your Honor, have just bought front row seats to your own embarrassment. A soft gasp floated across the room. Even some of the court officers looked up from their boredom. I'm not here to beg for mercy, she continued, staring directly at Roberts. You already decided I was guilty the moment I refused to sit quiet while old men in cheap suits played God with people's rights. So don't act surprised. This fine, this court date, this performance, it's not about law. It's about control. And you lost it the second I refused to blink. She took a few steps forward, not toward the judge, but toward the truth. I'm the daughter of a woman who cleaned other people's homes while being told she was lucky to have a mop. I'm the granddaughter of a man who stood outside polling stations so his neighbors could vote without fear. So don't lecture me about protocol. The room was frozen, not from cold, but from a silence that weighed heavy like it didn't know where to go next. Y'all wrote the rules. I read them. Then I found out you weren't following them. So I exposed it. And now you want to punish me for holding up a mirror? You don't like what you see? Don't blame the mirror. Blame your damn face. A nervous chuckle broke out from one corner, quickly smothered. I get it. A black woman with receipts and no interest in being polite is threatening. You thought I'd be like the others. Polished, careful, grateful to be let inside. But I didn't come here to decorate the room. I came to rearrange it. She let that hang. I've been called emotional, aggressive, disrespectful, all because I refused to clap while the house burned down. But you want to know what's disrespectful? Lying to the American people. Protecting bigots in suits while punishing the truth-tellers in heels. That's disrespectful, and you're fine with that. You just don't like when I talk about it into a mic you can't shut off. At this point, Roberts was no longer scribbling notes. His fingers were clasped tightly, jaw clenched. He looked like someone trying to keep his wig on in a windstorm. You said I broke decorum, she said, slowly. No, sir. I broke your comfort. And comfort ain't sacred. Justice is. She stepped back from the mic. For a few seconds, there was just the sound of air moving around people too afraid to exhale. She nodded once. One of her supporters, a high school teacher from Detroit, launched a fundraising campaign titled $200K for the realest Congresswoman alive. Within 8 hours, it passed $500,000. By the end of the day, it broke $1 million. Jasmine didn't even ask for it. But people gave like they were paying for something they'd been robbed of for years, representation with a spine. Meanwhile, conservative commentators scrambled. Ben Shapiro did a 37-minute YouTube video ranting about decorum and leftist victim theatrics, but got ratioed so hard on Twitter, he shut off the comments. Candace Owens tried calling Jasmine a puppet of performative politics, only to be roasted in her own replies by someone who posted a clip of her once praising court dissent as bravery. Then Beyoncé posted a black and white still of Jasmine walking out the courthouse with the caption, "Say her name with respect." No hashtags, no promo, just vibes. Oprah chimed in 3 days later on her podcast and called the moment a truth bomb dropped on the courthouse floor. Tyler Perry announced he was writing a script loosely inspired by the event, with a powerhouse role in mind for Viola Davis. Even Michelle Obama reposted a clip with a simple quote, "Truth doesn't need permission." By week's end, CNN was calling it the Crockett effect. Journalists were booking interviews. College professors were updating syllabi. Law students were dissecting the moment in class. And Jasmine? She was at home, drinking tea, sending thank you messages to grassroots organizers who'd been writing with her since the local days. No PR team, no press conference, just her holding her ground as the country did what the courtroom failed to do. Listen, even Republicans felt the tremor. Senator Greaves, the same crusty instigator who sparked the whole circus, ducked press for 2 days straight. When he finally emerged, he looked like a man who'd been haunted by a quote he couldn't unhear. He tried to blame media bias and incomplete context, but nobody cared. The context was clear. Jasmine Crockett stood in front of a system built to shame her and made it weep instead. America saw it, and for once it didn't look away. The storm didn't pass, it settled in. Not like a hurricane, wild and gone in a flash, but like a season that refused to end. Jasmine Crockett had stepped into a courtroom meant to tame her, and walked out having rewired something bigger than law. Something cultural, something buried. Within days you could feel it, not just on the internet, but in actual rooms that used to pretend people like Jasmine didn't exist. Congressional meetings got tenser. Microphones stayed hot a little longer. The faces of those usually allowed to coast on polished vagueness suddenly looked flushed when pressed on real issues. Because now, everyone had a reference point. People didn't say, "Speak boldly." They said, "Pull a Jasmine." And that $200,000 fine, it became a punchline. By the following week, the amount had been tripled on purpose by public donation. 300 grand raised and counting, most of it from folks who'd never even voted before, but said her words made them register that very day. Not out of inspiration, out of rage, out of exhaustion, out of seeing a woman finally say what they scream at their screens every election cycle. The money didn't go to her pockets. Jasmine launched a national fund, Justice Forward, aimed at providing legal aid to whistleblowers and activists targeted by political retaliation. The first grant? It went to a janitor in Georgia who got fired for recording a state official laughing about black folks missing ballots like it's a game of hide and seek. Jasmine flew down, met him personally, handed him the check. Cameras caught the hug. The clip hit Instagram, then hit CNN. Meanwhile, in Washington, change crept in, but not gently. Senator Greaves tried to save face by proposing a new courtroom conduct bill, clearly written in the spirit of how to muzzle people without saying you're scared of them. It flopped before it even reached committee. No Democrat touched it, and a few Republicans quietly ghosted the vote, not wanting Jasmine's face on their campaign flyers come midterms. And then came Roberts. A closed-door meeting leaked. He'd asked to see Jasmine. Not publicly, not for show, privately. Sources said he didn't want staff present, just the two of them. Jasmine agreed. They sat in a windowless room in the back of the court for less than 15 minutes. Nobody knows what was said, but when he came out, his eyes were red, and he walked slower than usual, like someone who'd heard something he couldn't unhear. He didn't resign. He didn't reverse the fine. But months later, he authored a surprising opinion in a voting rights case, one that leaned left. Just enough to raise eyebrows. Just enough to suggest maybe, just maybe, that courtroom moment lodged itself somewhere permanent. Schools started referencing her testimony in civics classes. Professors taught it beside MLK's letter from Birmingham jail. A university in North Carolina offered her an honorary doctorate. She turned it down politely and said, "Give it to a public school teacher instead. They're the ones raising fighters." But maybe the wildest shift came in culture. Late-night comedy couldn't stop. Trevor Noah dropped a segment called Jasmine vs. The Machine. SNL ran a skit, poorly acted of course, but the laughter landed. Rappers mentioned her name in bars. One hook went, "Find me like Crockett, I'll still pop it." TikTok turned her stare down with Roberts into a challenge. People filmed themselves facing off with their bosses, professors, exes, calling it the gavel stare. But beneath all the fun and hype, something more serious simmered. America saw a mirror, and this time, it didn't turn away. Because Jasmine didn't win with a slogan. She didn't sell merchandise. She didn't sanitize herself for broad appeal. She told the truth, raw and upright, in a room designed to crush it, and walked away standing taller than ever. People started asking better questions. Why are fines used to silence? Why do judges wield shame like a weapon? Why is it so dangerous when a wrong person speaks with too much truth? And in that quiet, subtle shift, the nation blinked awake. Not all at once, not everywhere, but in living rooms, classrooms, courtrooms, people started leaning forward a little more, listening harder, remembering that one voice, the right voice, doesn't need permission to echo. And Jasmine, she kept working, not louder, not softer, just sharper, still on the floor of Congress, still unfiltered, still bold enough to get fined again. And if they did, well, America already knew what came next. Fine her again. She'll just turn it into a movement. So now you've seen it all. The fine, the courtroom, the stare down, the silence that cracked the man in the robe, the speech that lit a fire under half the country and scared the other half stiff. Jasmine Crockett didn't just clap back. She didn't just win hearts. She shook the damn pillars. And while the folks in suits scrambled to hold on to their old tricks, the rest of us were left asking one real question. If that had been you, would you have stood up? Would you have spoken with no script, no backup, knowing the system was loaded against you? Would you have sat back down with your dignity intact, or would you have folded under that gavel? Because let's be honest, most people wouldn't. Most would have swallowed their pride, played nice, and walked out quiet just to live another day. But not her. Jasmine stood for something, even if she had to stand alone. Now here's where I need you to stand for something too. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Seriously, are you in Texas like her? DC? Lagos? London? Drop your location so we know who's out there watching real power get checked. And if you made it this far in the video and still haven't hit like, shared, or subscribed, let's talk. Maybe you didn't subscribe because you've gotten too used to silence. Maybe you only cheer from the sidelines when it's safe. Or maybe, deep down, you don't think truth like this deserves to win. That's fine. But don't come back here next time pretending you care about change while skipping past the voices making it. And if you're bold enough to hit that red button, welcome. You're not just a viewer. You're part of something now. A voice. A crowd. A movement that doesn't ask for permission to speak. So like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And comment below, what would you have done in that courtroom? And if your answer is anything close to what Jasmine did, then don't just watch the moment, back it. Because next time, it could be you. Or worse, no one.